Happy New Year, my friend.
Happy New Year. How do you say that in your language? Which language?
Gelukkig nieuwjaar.
Gelukkig nieuwjaar.
Yeah. And how do you say that in Chinese?
Actually, I never say it in Chinese. We just say something that's equivalent in Taiwanese of congratulations, because I don't really know how to say Happy New Year. So it's Zhongyi, which is just congratulations.
Zhongyi. Zhongyi.
Other people watching this will probably know exactly what to say, but I don't know.
Okay. We'll find out then.
Yeah.
This is recorded, so we'll get an answer automatically. Yes. Isn't that great? As of today, I'm officially a citizen of Eindhoven.
Ah, does that mean that you had to register with the city?
Yes, that's
really?
what it is.
Huh.
Yes.
Via your new address? Is that what had to happen? Is that how you get? What services become available once you do that?
Well, I'm rightfully a Dutch citizen with a Dutch address, so I have all the rights of the support a Dutch citizen can get, whatever my situation. So, and the point is that I officially do exist. Otherwise, I would be missing, because I was living in another country officially.
Oh, that's right. That's right. You have to re-enter the country. That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
So there was
okay.
And I've due to flaws in the administrational system between the two countries, I went missing for 2 weeks. Huh. There's Tammy.
Yes. Huh. So was it difficult or was it simple?
Well, it turned out rather simple, but in Antwerp it was extremely hard to enter the country in Belgium as a Dutch guy. So I had a file this thick, and then I said, okay, I'm leaving. I expected a lot of trouble as well, but that just took what I just had to tell them on a website and said, okay, you're gone. We'll send you a note confirmation by mail, and that's it. But then the confirmation did not arrive, and I needed that piece of paper in order to register. Tammy's restarting.
So does Doug. I saw a note from Doug saying that he'll be here momentarily.
Okay.
Okay.
That's nice and timely. Restarting is good in the new year, isn't it?
Yes. Right on the second day. Doug sent another note. So I'm curious, Harry. Oh, yeah. What's in the chat here? Oh, that's Tammy. So if I put this link in here.
Yeah. Yes. Opening the link.
Yes.
Workflowy. It's
yes.
Yes.
Do you see what I'm typing?
I see 1-800 GCC call notes attendees. I see.
Yes.
Yes. Oh, you're gonna take your notes there. That's what you want.
No. Hey, Heiner, how are you?
I'm fine.
Yeah.
Gut geht's.
How do you say frohes neues Jahr?
Ein frohes neues Jahr. Jawohl.
What was the first?
Wiederhole bitte.
I didn't get you.
Could you repeat?
Ein gutes neues Jahr.
Gutes neues Jahr. Okay, gutes neues Jahr.
Ein gutes Neujahr. Gutes Neujahr für Sie auch.
Ich verstehe das.
Es freut mich, Sie zu sehen.
Mich auch. Are we doing some small talk here? Or
Yes.
is there some business?
Tammy and
Like-
Doug are on the way. So we
Maybe
haven't really launched. What you said didn't come through clearly, Heiner.
Metacognitional business.
Yes. Remember, we're going to talk about the mashup of what you've been trying to do, what Doug's been trying to do, what I've been trying to do, what Tammy's been trying to do, what Glenn's been trying to do, what 8 billion people are trying to do. We're going to build it all today.
One day. Turbulence.
Hey, Glenn.
Hey, good to see you.
And by the way, Doug and Tammy are both rebooting their machines, so they're both going to be here soon.
I'll do a bio break then.
Okay. By the way, when I created this event 1 or 2 days ago, I put it in the GCC calendar. Is that where you all saw it, or did you just see my note in Facebook just now?
I was
remember
to you and to Tammy because I'm really at loss with all these different Zoom rooms and I have plenty on my own. So I think we should give them certain clear names. Then I can go through my Zooms and click, this is I want to go to. The mashup meta room or whatever you call it.
Okay. Yeah, that happens if we set this up as a regular thing. I haven't yet set this up as a regular thing. I was not that presumptuous that everyone would be interested in coming back.
I think I could really like to go into this many times. Well, but let's begin today and see where it goes. Looking forward.
Since Doug and Tammy are not in here, I'm going to go refill my water bottle. I'll be back in about a minute.
Yeah.
So Harry, how are you? Are you still trying to reunite the Flemish and Dutch and whatever worlds in your lower lands? Or what are you up to now?
Hi, Tammy. Today I officially registered as a citizen of Eindhoven. So I'm totally Dutch, which simplifies my life and my brain.
Cool.
Cool. Hi, Tammy.
Hi.
Happy New Year, dear.
Yes, Happy New Year.
What was that, Harry? That was cool. I didn't get it.
Oh, well, first listen to this. Happy New Year, Glenn.
Happy New Year. Yeah.
Far more important.
Yeah.
And then what is cool that I am a Dutch citizen officially, living as a citizen of Eindhoven. I registered today, so that part is done. And it's a relief because I went missing for 2 weeks, according to the administration.
Okay. Nice. I've been in Amsterdam a few times. Really wonderful place.
Yes, I considered Amsterdam, but everybody wants to go there. So it's become like a lot of tourists all the time, even from Norway.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have you been there, Tammy?
Not yet.
Not yet. Well, come and see us.
I would love to.
Yes.
But I recommend to go to Eindhoven. It's quite different from Amsterdam. And it's really very deep and cultural and creative. Even architects and designers go there.
Well, the nice thing about Eindhoven, it's not next to Amsterdam, so it has an identity of its own. And there's a technical university that's of good quality. There's a design academy, very world-class. And there are a lot of startups and also old technology from Philips, because Philips started in Eindhoven. So there's a lot of legacy on one hand and all the new stuff. And it's a very lively place. So it's good to start to reboot myself here.
So I think we're still waiting for Doug.
Yes.
We are now, 11 minutes past the hour. Is that
There
Doug?
he is.
There he is. 11 minutes past the hour. Doug Breitbart entering. No. Yes.
Da-da-da-da.
Ta-da.
Sam, I'm wondering if in the spirit of our cooperative collaboration work, if you can give us all powers.
I will gladly give you all powers. Should I make you all co-hosts? Or, because only one person can be host, right?
That's correct.
Okay, let me give you all co-host.
And what that means is that if you hear, because sometimes when someone's making noise and their mic is open, I'd like any one of us to be able to mute that person, because you can't always hear it from your end. And that way we're all empowered.
And how do I mute somebody else? Will I see this?
I think you right-click on their window.
Yeah.
On their picture.
For me, if you hover over their window, you get a...
Oh, yes. I can mute you all. I can see it. Got it.
Okay, everyone is now co-host.
You all.
All you other.
It also means each one of us can record.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes.
Nice.
So I'm wondering, does everyone here watch ourselves in speaker view or in gallery view?
Gallery.
Gallery now.
Does anyone do speaker view?
I do occasionally, if I really want to zoom in on that person.
I tried it.
I'm wondering if one person can record in speaker view and one person can record in gallery view today.
So I am recording right now in gallery view.
Great. Do we have a volunteer that wants to record in speaker view?
Yes, but maybe it's best that somebody does it who records to the cloud or not. Does that make a difference?
It doesn't make a difference.
But then, okay, then I will record in speaker.
There's a small difference, isn't there? That if you record to the cloud, you're under more severe space restrictions.
What I've noticed, well, it's connected to your account then, Sam, so it would be in your cloud. I noticed one time that it recorded in the opposite thing. Anyway, we just test it. If you record to your machine, then you can just upload to YouTube, and it's coming to your local box. So,
and you can still have 6 different recordings if you so choose. Each one of us could choose to do it.
It's true.
Okay, I can choose to record to this computer or to the cloud now.
That's right.
So which one would I choose? Oh.
Record to your computer if you have enough space. It might be a gig or so.
Yeah.
Okay, I started recording to my computer now, and you asked this with an intention. You want to be able to combine them to make or not?
Eventually. I don't think we yet have the technology.
One of the things that we can do is we can then just take single clips of what we create with just that person. So we could do some editing afterwards and just grab little pieces that doesn't show all of us.
Yes, but that would require somebody who has the technology and the skills to do that.
Yes.
Who is that?
By the way, under my account, I do have this option selected where each one of us is recorded to a separate file. And that's true both for video and for audio. I don't post that today, but if we ever wanted to, I could, and then anyone else could later go in and do that edit if they so choose. Hi, Anna.
Anna.
Hi, Anna. Happy New Year. Hi, Doug. Did you shrink, or is your computer just leaning backwards?
Doug got shorter, then taller.
Can I ask Sam what this is? Does this meeting have a particular agenda?
It does have a focus. Yes, it does. So the focus for this particular meeting is around that topic, and clearly the rest of you will correct me, but my impression is that at the end of the last meeting, some of us were sharing our slight frustration at how long it's taken to really get together, because each of us has apparently been speaking in this particular forum about years of past work regarding the kinds of tools we would like to see that augment our collective capability to work together. And for some of us, we call it metacognition engines. For some of us, we call it a dynamic knowledge repository. Others call it a global viz. Heiner's been calling it, I don't actually know the word Heiner uses. And then, Glenn's been thinking about this for years and writing about this for years, and Tammy's been trying to bring people together and trying to make best use of all these purposes. And I know Harry's been part of different groups here, and we all use different words, and we all focus on different aspects of the capability. So the suggestion, I think, suggested by Tammy at the end of last time was to talk about what are the use cases. And if you're not familiar with that term, it's what do each of us as a role, as a stakeholder, want to be able to do with such a technology or with such a platform or with such a tool or with such an app or even with such a protocol without the app, just between us. If we're just using existing tools, what would we want to be able to do, and what would we want to be able to do more easily and more intuitively, so that we could actually have what I'm calling this group shared memory or any kind of other shared knowledge artifacts or information or data artifacts that allow us to grow our capabilities and grow our collaboration. That would be my statement of what I think we were talking about, but clearly I would think everyone here should have their round and figure out how they want to express it. Okay, that'd be my suggestion. And I see Heiner.
I like this approach now, and I had hoped, or I was thinking about this 1 year ago when we started with this round of the hot seat, because I don't have one thing. I said I have 3 legs. I'm a 3-legged person, and maybe I have even 2 more or whatever legs. And so it is not one box or one thing I'm interested in, or what you, Sam, are interested in. We are very, very diverse. And to bring this together, we tried with Tony Judge in a matrix of participants, so we see where we connect and how we overlap in various fields. So I'm not just selling a panorama, and Sam, you're not only selling metacognition. We have to see where we not only overlap, but where we don't agree, and come to a coalition or whatever.
So I'd like to suggest some calibration stuff around what was just said. The first step in terms of sort of figuring out what it is we're hurting here and how to do that. I know that Harry has mentioned to me he's part of a group that's working on this. And that's as much information as I have. He had invoked previously that we should have a conversation about it. I've got Collective Metacognition Machine Work, CMM for short, just so people don't have to stumble over all those words. Sam, you have a name for 2 or 3 distinct pieces that I think I've processed. And you have 6. So in terms of agenda protocol, has 7, 8. So Heiner's making fun of me. So so we're having fun, which Tammy requires. So the first sort of question to my mind is, what's the most effective way? Here's the pressure, here's the sort of pressure that I arrive with, and I want to voice it because I'm not going to give into it or let it affect how we, co-create this. But I feel a pressure I just want to get all of my shit out on the table so that everybody's up to speed on my shit. And then I want to get up to speed on everybody else's. And, but there's a push element to that, which Tammy already sort of brought me up for in our last video round, because out of that I ran, and instead of interrupting, creating spaces and giving her more room for questions and for meanderings around pieces of what I was sharing, I ended up, in playing back the videos, Tammy, I went back a second time after your last comments. So what's the most effective way for us to sort of get what we're doing and what we have out on the table? And how do we want to do that? Do we want to do that with any kind of structure that says we're going to do a piece, somebody introduces a piece, and then in a rotation way, everybody else can come in if they have something that's on top of or redundant to that, if they have an augmentation to that, or if they have something to add, and comments and sort of meta input and framing around that as we go in a bite-sized serialized way. Do we want to do turns, rotations, where this session is one person, the next session is another person, next session is another person, until we've sort of gone through everybody and provided the floor, as it were, for somebody to get through their greater grandeur as a complete exposition du texte, or whatever else somebody else might want to suggest. But that's sort of a threshold thing in my mind about how do we want to do this together and what's our agreement in that approach. And I'm not married or committed to any particular methodology coming into this, but I wanted to put that on the table because I'm very aware of my own sort of like, horses at the bit going, okay, you want to get the Medicare, you want to get the CMM out and get these people up to speed so that, you can and off to the races. And I'm complete.
Okay, could I add my 2 cents? There is so much knowledge in all of you, and so much ambition, and it all comes together, and it can very quickly to me become a huge pile I can never digest. And so for me, first of all, I need kind of where are we? This is the kind of frame, and I think what brings us together is a shared ambition to be a part of a better society, without being able to define it as clearly that we can say that's what our paradise looks like, and we bring all capabilities was the proper word, and so we would like to, but we need a kind of a focal point. So is it, and to me, I think we all have the nice thing. Okay, the nice thing is that we all are on different places in the earth, having our own projects. And I think the best we can do is to act locally, so focus on what we want to do, really do in real life, and use each other, this global community, to support each other with techniques, connections, whatever we can learn from each other. And in order to that, we need to be able to share it. In order to do that, we need a place where to share it, and a place to collect these harvests and to learn from that as fast and easily as we can. So we need to kind of use all technologies available, and we can improve on that. And we need a common language and a common protocol. I think that's what I can say for the moment. With that, I'm complete for the moment.
Okay, I'll jump in. To land in the space of the global challenges collaboration, part of what came together for me was the idea of having processes and protocols for interoperability, both in terms of human interaction, which is part of what we've been focused on in terms of our twice weekly meetings, but also with the technology that we're either building or would like to build. So today, my intention, if that flows from our generative conversation style, is to feed into what I would need as a user to be able to share my work and others' work. And thank you, Doug, thank you so much for doing the piece with me and for being so open to really looking at how we can do that better, because that best serves what we can do together is when we can really look at what we've created and say, oh, yes, okay, I see how I can do this better, because it is a series of learnings in terms of how do we allow the pipe of this is what I have to bring, and give space for people to be able to understand and take it in. And that for me is the human interoperability. We need to understand each other. And so in terms of, I have certainly ideas of what I would like to see, how we can create context for connected information. This is part of what excites me about what Sam is working on, what Doug is working on, Glenn, what you've talked about, all of us really, but part of it and part of the challenge is how do we really understand each other and give each other the space to be able to put our hand up. And I love, Anna, that you do that. You've taught me so much in saying, hold up, I don't understand, or I don't agree. And we need to be able to work that muscle too, because there will be others that don't understand or don't agree. And part of our process is to be able to create the spaces to be able to do that and make that understandable in a very human way. So I look forward to jumping into what kind of communication protocols we need to create to be able to not only be able to express our work interrelated to each other's work, but also, as Sam says, make it composable with other bits. So this is what I'm excited about, and thank you everyone for showing up. This is exciting.
I've just been listening to your interview with Doug, which I found really helpful. I didn't manage to finish it, but the beginning bit, which was really describing what he was doing, I felt came over very clearly. It was also helpful to me that that first bit didn't involve a lot of technical stuff that I wouldn't have been able to understand. And, you know, I would love to discuss the pros and cons of what he's proposing. And it feels really good that we've got it there. So I feel that a lot of this involves homework. It involves us watching, you know, it isn't going to be possible for each person to give that amount of information within the context of a meeting. It really means that we have to do homework and, you know, get to know what it is that people are proposing. And I've put up something which is not my own, but it's to do with the World Citizen film, which I feel is really worth thinking about. And, you know, I would love, that just happens to be where I am at the moment. It seems to change quite frequently. But I would love for people to be able to watch the whole film, not just the bit that was at the end that was put up.
I did
and
that,
for us
Anna.
to be able to discuss it.
I did that just to let you know.
Okay. Yeah, to me, it's important. If I can just say the reason why I feel it's important, what Doug is proposing is trying to persuade the big corporations to allow their staff to really practically take over the industry. That's what he's doing. And I feel that that is still a top-down thing because the corporation has to allow it to happen. If we become citizens of the world, then it's up to us to actually make the decisions and take over. So that's what I see as the alternatives that we have. It's quite a radical thing, but I see that's the only way to go, because otherwise it's always top down. Okay, I finished there.
I also want to make my confessional, and I even have a secret. I had a lot of problems with all these videos. I mean, only count the hours, but my trick is to do the kitchen work. And I know the people, so I don't have to see all the pictures all the time, but I know the voices. And so I can do something else besides, and that is my thing. But what I wanted to say, Doug, I really liked your presentation. It gave me a much better idea because it was very vague. In certain aspects of your implementation of doing the Manhattan Project, I'm not ready for that. You see, I'm trying to put down some of my projects and not build up on you. But I think I can give my ideas, like going to the unions, going to the foundations, and not just to the insurance companies. All this, there is some experience. But coming back to the broader picture of what we are discussing here, I found a very, how do you say, revealing article, and I'm now going to share it in the chat room, on what is the problem with us in the West. Why are we racist and xenophobic? Why do we say the other cultures don't have philosophy? All these things. So I really recommend that, because what we are trying to do here is really bridge not only cultures, but different mindsets, different histories, and all this. And this definitely we all agree we cannot do in flat. So when studying how we, especially in America, also in Europe, neglect Indian thought, Chinese thought, and whatever, even putting them down, like all the African traditions are not presented in the typical curricula, and I think only 5 universities have something close to looking into philosophy from other cultures. So I think what we are trying to do here is really gargantuan. It's really incredible, and I really like the width. And I would like to have an extra lifetime to go with Doug on values and Sam on Chinese culture. But I think the challenge is, if we condense our time, then we can really get something out of the box, leapfrogging going on here. So excuse me, my 5 cents.
You know, I think part of the motivation for this forking, focusing on technology meets effort, human effort, is because in principle, if technology were purposed in service to human beings properly, it would enable and amplify the generative power and potential of our time exponentially. And right now it's sort of doing the reverse. It's like we spend a huge amount of time diverted to the care feeding of the technology and data rather than it working for us, is my experience of it. And Anna, you're really important. The fact that you're here for this, given its genesis was to sort of focus on a platform and technology affordances. If you're with us through this process so that we not facilitate, but we support and provide the means for you to stay engaged with this process and understand it, not as a technologist, but as a human being, because it's that convergence, right? It's that nexus of technology and human being that is what we need to fix. That's the problem. And it's all about you. Like, if I reference, I don't use the language use case. I look at it from human experience, right? So a human's experience of this particular piece of the puzzle. What would I want? What would I want my machine to provide to me or enable me to do in the moment in a particular context? So my whole thing is through a human experience lens, but you bring that to this conversation. And to my mind, you're the one we've got to serve here. That if we serve you and you go, yeah, I could use that, or you lost me, I don't even understand what it is you're suggesting I have access to or could do, or I can't relate to that and I don't care about that, which is as important a defined negative space in technology development as any, because if that's your response to a piece of the puzzle, then that's something for, by, and between conversation between computer science engineers, coders, AI people, not you. That should be invisible in the end product and result because it's not relevant to you as the human being who wants to do stuff.
Okay.
If that makes sense. So I want to acknowledge you for even showing up and being here. And I hope you stay with us in the game because you're a huge resource that's invaluable to this. The minute we lose you or you raise your hand and go, this is boring the crap out of me, we've just taken a huge mimetic domain and we go, this place is not for that, it's for a technical circle up.
I just want to say that I'm not going to be able to stay for the whole of this meeting. I have a guest coming anyway, so if I disappear.
But thank you.
I want to make sure everyone has a chance to have an opening round statement.
Okay. I can say.
Glenn?
Yeah?
Could you increase the sensitivity of your microphone? You did that one time when I asked you to do it, and it was perfect. So I was wondering if you could do that again.
Yeah. How does it sound now?
Not much different, actually. Anyway, keep going. If you don't do it, I guess we'll turn up the speakers.
Yeah, okay. I'll just try to speak clearly. Well, I just would like to try today to sort of try to formulate in a more coherent way something that I've been working on for more than 10 years. So it's quite a challenge. to do it in a short form, and try to make it understandable. But anyway, that's what I would like to do. So I like the idea of each of us having an opening statement or saying what we feel we want to share, and then we can kind of take it from there. So should I just begin straight away, or okay. I've taken some notes today, so yeah, I think I have the most important things. So it's gonna be quite a challenge to try to keep this short, but okay, here we go. So if I wanted to, I think I'll actually begin by trying to describe it in one sentence. So it's an idea of what I would call a multi-dimensional super system for all people in the world to be able to live together in happiness, basically. That's one way of putting it. It goes back a few years. It's something that started off in my early 20s. I began to already then think about systems for using language and structuring language in certain ways in order to have practical impact on real life events. But it wasn't really serious at the time. It was a little here and there. I was doing different things. I had a job and working a bit on the side. And then I kind of always had a philosophical mindset. So I kind of approached this in a philosophical way, from first principles, and that's sort of the way this has been developed. And it was about 12 years ago I kind of started on a what you call spiritual journey, very influenced by the work of Gurdjieff, and also read this great book, a 1,300 pages long book. All and Everything was the first part of that series, and that was one of several episodes which changed my life, you could say, because many of the views that I had of reality until then sort of all kicked out, and I was in this total confusion about everything, and at the same time feeling inspired in a new way. And I also came into contact with some people who were working with this Gurdjieff work, and I've been working quite actively with them for about the last 12 years. Then it was around about 2008, 2009, 10-ish, I began to get some ideas. And I'd had similar ideas before, but this time it was very different. It was much more intense, and it came to me in these visions. So it was like maybe once a week, I just got this vision, and it just came over me, and I would just sit up all night and write and make drawings and different things. And this went on for about a year, and then I began to feel that I'd come across something very, very big, and I just quit my job, basically. I had a job, sales job at the time, calling small companies, and but then I couldn't focus on that anymore, and I just quit my job. So for 2 years, I more or less totally went into this. And since I'd worked a few years, I kind of could have enough money to survive, more or less. But I was kind of planning to start something practical at the time, but it took a lot. But it just, the ideas just came on and on and on, and it became, I didn't even know what it was. So I just had to sort of go into it and take it slow and try to let it sink in. And I've pretty much been trying to do that since then and until now. And it's more or less only in the last year or so that I've had more active communications with others who seem to be working on something similar. Also have a friend, Darren Stevenson. I don't know if some of you know him, but he also, I had some chats with him too, and we found out that we'd been working on almost very, very similar direction. So basically, what is this? It's not easy to say, but it is a kind of a vision of a sort of super system which can somehow unite information with physical events in space directly, so that there's a direct link between the theoretical and the practical, between the abstract and the concrete, fantasy and reality. And so it comes from a non-dual perspective, in the sense that I've kind of abandoned the idea that the theoretical is in a different world. So this perspective sees language and information and theory as a type of events in space. So it sees information and theory as something which happens in space. So it's like a pattern in space. And we, by perceiving this pattern, when we interact with this pattern, then this pattern creates new forms of life in space through us. So, and this has really got me to look very much at basic, you could say, language philosophy, information philosophy, those kind of things. But I don't have any special background in any of that. I've studied some philosophy, but they didn't go into any of this. Basically, but this is, I don't even know if this is programming or what it is, or if it's architecture, or if it's both. It's a very, very strange thing, which kind of has to do with everything, in a sense. And I'll show you a drawing, because there are certain structures which have come forth over and over again. Which is very much related with this thing. So it's a sort of fractal, and this pattern here is very basic. This is a very important pattern. So the entire system sort of is based around this pattern. I have another one which describes it better, and that's this one. Because here you can see that this is an example of a perfect fractal, because each unit has 7 parts, and each of those have 7 and 7 and 7, and goes to infinity. And it was very strange, because I began discovering these patterns. I hadn't read anything about it, but I just started drawing it, and then once I saw it, it really, really fascinated me, because I was sort of planning to make a mind map, but then the geometry itself just really fascinated me. And then later on, I started reading about sacred geometry, etc., and the fact that this pattern actually goes through nature on all kinds of levels. So the hypothesis was, could there then be a way to use this multidimensional geometry to organize information and organize events, and this could have a utility function in all kinds of ways. And the intuition and impression I have is that I don't see why it couldn't. So strangely enough, this geometry for me is software, but it's also architecture. So one vision which came, and it's totally insane, is that this is both software and architecture. So you could actually have physical buildings built on this architecture with software also built on this architecture, where there's perfect integration between the physical structures of the spaces that you're operating in and the information structures that come in. And then there's a lot of other things too. There's music, actually. Strangely enough, in this period there actually came music to me, very interesting music that I haven't heard before, and also a sort of mythological drama literature of sorts, which is called Stories from Possible Worlds, which is one way of using language to tell stories through a mythic form, where we can imagine possible futures arising from the present situation, and where the characters of the stories can be different versions of ourselves. So that was also a part of it. And I had a few moments when I kind of saw some scenes from these stories in my mind, and it was the most amazing scenes I've ever seen. I had this impression there that if this scene could be translated into a YouTube video in its purest form, it would totally change the world. I actually had that. It was that powerful, and it was very dancing scene. These visions, they were always dancing, so it was like a wheel where everything was dancing around the wheel, and in the wheel lots of other smaller wheels and smaller wheels, etc. But it was all this sort of geometry, and that's of course what you also see here, that you have smaller fractals within infinity. So I think I'll just leave it at there for now. But the basic thing that this has to do with is the relationship between human beings and information and events in physical space on planet Earth. So yeah, leave it at that for now.
Thank you, Glenn. It's interesting because I'm continuously fascinated by how much information we have inside of us and what that process is to bring it out, because I can feel and resonate with you, but I didn't hear it all. I think that part of the tension that we're with is that there's each one of us has a vision inside that feels like it's got very similar constituent parts, but articulating it in such a way that it can be understood is difficult. And in particular with I have a sense of a deep spiritual understanding that you're translating. And I resonate with that. I have some of those similar experiences, as do others. And and it really is difficult to bring it from that multidimensionality space into something that's very grounded and here and now. So I just want to thank you for doing your best to midwife that, because it's not easy. And in terms of, I'll just underline a piece around, I feel like we all have an inner knowing of what it is that we need to be able to make this transition from the types of ways that we relate together, both with information and our time, energy, and attention, and with keeping in mind the state of the world right now and what we all need. I feel like all of us have parts of that understanding that together we can understand. So I just, I don't know exactly how to weave that in such a way that it's understood. And I'm also excited to try. So maybe what I'll offer is, for me in the world, I want to be able to demonstrate cooperation with whoever I'm with, and document those collaborations so that we can learn how to be better, do it better, and be in a deep learning curve. So part of what I've been doing is I've been rewatching almost every session. I've stayed up on that for a few weeks now. And that means that I'm able to see, oh, right, ha, look at where you bragged that you know so much about democracy. How did that feel to watch? Nah, not so great. And so there's that very personal learning of how I'm learning how to communicate myself and what I bring to the table. But there's also how do we weave what we have together? And I think that's been the journey of the last few months, is how do we weave what we are together? And so it's like surfacing a little part and then passing the baton. So that's the part I'll surface, and now I'll pass the baton.
So I would like to just make a little comment about how Glenn was sharing. In a way, it was a very personal account of your own development. And I think it's quite important to be able to distinguish or discriminate. It makes it interesting, of course, to know, you know, the jobs and how you had to give up this, and to know the personal thing, but that's not relevant here. I think it's really important to pick out, because when you started talking about the actual idea, then it was like powerful, then it was fascinating, then it grabbed me completely. But when you intermingle that with your own development, how you got there, you know, that may be interesting if you were writing a biography, but it's not what's relevant here. And I would recommend just trying to leave those bits aside and make it really direct on your actual ideas, because they are really fascinating. And just following Tammy's thing about, oh, sorry, Sam, you carry on.
No, please go ahead. You haven't finished yet.
Well, I was just going to do this thing that Tammy is talking about trying to think what we actually want to communicate or give some form to what it is that we feel is the bit that we're cherishing about this new world that we're wanting to bring into birth. For me, it's something to do with really everybody feeling totally whole and free in the way that they can relate to. I mean, I was very taken with Doug's presentation of really wanting the people who are part of these corporations to take over and really be the ones. I don't actually really see it happening, I have to say. I'm a bit skeptical. But yes, that would be wonderful. That's what we want. We want people to take charge of their own lives and be in charge of how they labor, how they work, not sell their labor, because that's already going down the wrong path. But I mean, it's also something to do with Glenn's idea that can all be happy and, you know, live these harmonious lives together. Yeah, I totally believe that. Yeah, so that's my vision of the future.
I'll make a couple of meta comments. And that is that in some way, I want to, in some way, balance that last perspective you gave, Anna, because for each of us, the personal path is very important. And if we're collaborating, to know what has compelled one to come to a certain view helps me understand how my thing is going to impact that person. And if I just say, I'm going to give you this diagram, that's one level of communication. But if I give you an 8-year history of how that diagram came to be in either dreams or visions or conversations with Doug Engelbart or other groups like this that I've been with, then you get a sense of the depth of that diagram for me that I think can be useful. Now, if we're in a company where we're just creating diagrams and designs and etc., I completely agree with you, okay? We won't need to spend that personal time understanding each other because, heck, the product is what matters. But here we are trying to figure out how do we best understand and work with each other so that I understand what compels you, Anna, and hopefully you understand what compels me and why I've dedicated my life to Doug Engelbart's vision, embraced and extended, So I don't want to necessarily always be pokey, but I do want to balance that particular perspective. The second observation I would offer is a version of the smart people problem. I see a lot of smart people here. We've all spent a lot of time thinking about these problems. We all have probably reams and reams of pages or terabytes worth of notes or, megabytes worth of drawings, etc., that we are all just bursting at the seams to show to each of us. And if I do that, if Glenn does that, if Heiner does that with his 45 years or whatever it is, or multiple lifetimes, and if you do that with your contributions, and Tammy does that with her 1,000 videos, and Doug does that with his notes with, you get the message, right? This is the ultimate, I think, smart people problem, is that we are each so convinced that we have an element of the truth that we can't afford to give up what we are pursuing. But yet, what we are pursuing needs to be given up because we're already booked 120 or 150% with it. And if we don't give up some aspect of it, we'll never be generous enough to really hear the other parts from the rest of us. It is really hard. In fact, I find it much easier in a company to just go and pay a few people, and say, this is what I want, and, let's just go. And I find that many volunteer organizations that get together, there's a similar dynamic going. Somebody says, here's the plan, let's just go. Now, if that clear hierarchical relationship has been established, fine, no problem. But that's not what I think we are here, right? There's no one, especially not me, especially not, at least one of the rest of you, that says, here's the vision, let's go, jump on board. And yet, we're all here with at least the generosity to be here on a Tuesday morning to try and listen. and to be able to give each other enough of an idea that we can then start that interweaving that Tammy's talking about. But if I go and take all my, years of notes ever since, 1993 and dump it on you all, it's going to take you weeks, months, whatever, to even understand it. And that even assumes you have the motivation to do it, which I guarantee you doesn't exist right now. So how can we artfully develop the skill set to give in just enough into this shared pool of meaning that each of us can say, well, here's how we can take that and compose, and here's how I can, something that relates, and hopefully watch something get created among all of us. But that is not possible so long as each of us is doing this only in our own heads. What we each have is so well thought out, so complicated, so intermingled with other thoughts, that if we don't have some better way to share it, we're not going to be able to make much progress, because what you have in your head, Anna, or versus what Doug has in his head and what I have in my head, without a shared representation, is guaranteed to be different. Guaranteed. So that's why, for me, if we're going to scale any kind of community or collaboration or values or projects or anything, there's got to be some way to share our knowledge artifacts, our information artifacts, our data artifacts. And right now, it's paper, or it's a document on the internet. They're such poor forms that allow us such few and such really poor methods of manipulating them. I can't take a sentence out of a Word document or even a paper document and do something with it meaningfully. I can't connect it to something in Wikipedia. I can't connect it to this email. I can't connect it to this audio of me having a conversation with Heiner, or this video of me having a conversation with Tammy or Doug. It is so poor. That's the problem I'm really, really living and trying to focus my efforts on. Okay. Now, I don't say that this is the problem everybody wants to work on. No, this is just my focus. Each of us has a different focus. And I think we're here trying to figure out where those focuses or foci can, in a sense, come together, snap together, hopefully, but at least, sort of bump up against each other and see if they actually have some sort of stickiness, And that, I think, is the exploration we're about to have. And even for that, we need a shared representation, a shared group memory. And so that's why at the beginning of this conversation, I posted a link. Not all of you have to do it, but it's a slightly different way of taking notes. In the chat transcript that Zoom gives us, we can write, but it's very linear, right? The last thing anybody writes is always at the end. The link that I sent out has a way for each of us to add comments no matter where that comment wants to be in that outline. And that outline can be focused, it can be expanded, it can be moved, it can be, indented or outdented. Each one of us can do that with the link that I gave you. And that is not even the best tool I have. That is just the simplest tool I wanted to introduce to this particular group at this juncture. There's a billion other tools I want to have us explore with, but that's just the very first, and I guarantee not the best, but it's just a very simple one. So I've said a few things, but I just want us to sort of develop that meta skill set that recognizes that each of us comes with reams and reams of knowledge. And how we establish, that motivation for each of us to share and build something together, not what I've already built, but something that comes from me sort of injecting one notion here, one notion there, and then co-creating that. That's what I want us to be able to do. And I've already said way too long, okay? Thanks.
Sam?
Wow, I love it, Sam.
Sam,
By the way,
I really like what you said.
Yeah.
The motto of the international harmonization efforts was, much is known, unfortunately in different heads. So it was not my head 30 or whatever years ago, it was the head of others and how we link them. So I, in contrast, liked what Glenn has been putting out as a personal statement very much, because it showed me his way. And while I was sitting here, I was taking out this book. It is a guy meeting Gurdjieff. And this book was just published. It's by Alexander King. No, I mean the daughter and fellows who worked for him, who did the Club of Rome, OECD, all this, but was also doing the Gurdjieff dances. And they looked into, with the intelligent Enneagram later, to really see the flow between the fields. So actually knowing through the statement that he was enthused by Gurdjieff, and then I would recommend Tony Blake and then Anthony Judge, and then not just looking into patterns, how they connect, but like the fractals, how they connect, like with the chaos theory of Mandelbrot in the deep across the scales, or as Tony Judge is doing it not in flat fields but with solids, how to see the living interoperation. That opens so many interesting realms. Excuse me, I also got over the cliff with all my encouragement. No, Glenn, I liked what you said very much.
I want to second that. I knew that about you, the Gurdjieff influence. You just sort of made it explicit. But I had a sense of that in the way you reacted and responded and contributed. And the genesis of your process and evolution personally to this meme that got us all here at this point in time, at this moment, right? With a common point mimetic center of gravity that generated pull, like that drew you here, that drew everybody here. Each one of us has our own narrative story and history as to the why this is important or meaningful to me. And I think the narrative or story that each of us has, that, you know, your story, me knowing your story in this context, in this mimetic domain, is really rich and important. But it also is I find it a really fast way of, in terms of knowing you. And I'm not a scholar of Gurdjieff, and I don't have a lot of the immersive experience of him that you do. But I felt the correlation. You hardened it up and enriched it a lot, right? It also, there's a yin and yang to that, which is, to me, it means that's a depth dimension frame of reference that you bring to a process. Just like Heiner, you know, carries with him this absolutely encyclopedic living history of global transformation movements and all the extensions off of that as a meme. And I know that he has that at his disposal. He doesn't have to look at anything. It's like, oh, here, this. He can provide the full bibliography on demand for about, you know, probably 200 or 300 distinct pieces of the transformation puzzle. And the knowing you, my knowing you, is one piece of the puzzle, but to my mind, the platform or tool or technology affordance that we're here to co-create, co-evolve, needs to know that. On that level, on that mimetic level, it needs to understand it on a meaning level, not just on a data level, not just in characters or zeros and ones. And I believe the technology is up to that task if it's designed so that the transcript of what you shared, analyzed and broken down, and then automatically behind the scenes cross-referenced and enriched with mimetic links and correspondences and resemblances, right? All of that is possible in service to augmenting and enriching the next word out of your mouth in the context of the next developmental piece of the puzzle that's being discussed, if that makes sense. And so, yeah, your going where you went instinctively, I think, was really cool. And I'd love a version of that from everybody here. Like, what's the pull? What was your genesis in getting to this point of discussion focus that brought you here, that has you deciding to do time and attention here as sort of a self-introduction? It was really good for me. I'm complete.
I want to just come back on that because I feel still the same as I felt, and I can see everybody nodding. So I'm obviously different. Knowledge, the sort of knowledge that you're talking about, I don't feel I value. It is not valuable to me. It's something to do with storing knowledge in this way as though we can store it. And I just don't believe that that sort of knowledge is storable or valuable. It is, I need to come as a beginner every time without this load of knowledge. Wisdom comes from somewhere else completely, not in carrying this baggage of knowledge around. So for me, my relationship to people here is not based on their histories or what they've said in the past, or it's based on how I'm relating to them now, which is in some way inexplicable. It's just the reality of a relationship and of the now, which is ungraspable. I feel we need to allow for that beingness, which is not based on additional, and this seems to be to do with also what you're wanting to, Sam's talking about building something so we can scale it. What you're trying to create together, finding the places where we meet. For me, the fact that we're different and we have such a lot of difference between us is incredibly valuable. And that's, you know, being able to accept those differences and parts that I don't understand, and, you know, why people disagree with it. All of that is part of this richness. And I still don't understand what it is that when Sam is saying, you know, I want to be able to take this sentence and connect it with that sentence and connect somehow these words and this to this experience. That doesn't make any sense to me. I still don't see the point of that. So I'm just letting you know.
Anna,
Can I jump in? Oh, go ahead, Harry.
Anna, could you tell a little more about what brings you here, or what you want to be or do here? Because I'm kind of puzzled. I kind of follow you, but then kind of say, yeah, I would like to hear more, please.
Wow. I mean, to me, it's amazing that you asked that question, because in a way, there's nothing that I can say. I'm here because I want to be here, because I enjoy discussing, because I enjoy these connections, because I enjoy people. I don't know what sort of an answer you want.
Well,
Because because I also feel that these people are struggling with the same sort of things that I'm struggling with. How do we produce a better world? Yeah.
So that's why you want a better world.
Totally, yeah.
But Anna, might I suggest that there was something in the past, something that was your understanding of who we are that brings you here as opposed to a different group at this very moment. So yes, that is a conception in your mind, in your brain. But the fact that Harry asked that question means that he's interested in that sharing. And that sharing, if it's not already someplace other than your brain, requires that we all spend the next 20 seconds or 3 minutes or 15 minutes invested in that answer. And then when, let's say, Daniel joins us next week or views this, he has to spend another 15 minutes or 2 minutes or whatever. So these shared representations are a way for us to bring us closer together, to build those connections that you were already talking about. And to make that happen in a way that actually happens so that I can live the rest of my life without, devoting 80% of it to watching these videos.
Driving, sorry.
Anyway, I think you get the point.
It's amazing to me.
Sorry, I have to leave you at this point. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye, Anna. It's amazing to me how complicated this is as a case of first impression. Like right out of the box, before you get to doing anything, building anything, progressing something, how complicated it is to do us differently. I mean, this is like square one, and it's really, really, when you recognize how much time and space and attention is required to know somebody, hear somebody, and connect and establish a connection and safety and trust on just a fundamental human experiential basis before you even start talking about anything else. It's like, really, this is really, and it's new territory. We're primitive. As a species, we're frickin' primitive. So like, I really think we're right at the leading edge of, we're doing this differently. And it's not something that aspirationally we have to do, or we're looking to do. We're in the act of generating a different thing here, a different way of being and interacting and relating. And bringing that to cases in this specific circle up at this particular time and day in service to this platform vision, right? The fact that it's purpose-driven and much more focused in terms of a thing doesn't mean these beginning steps aren't just as challenging and difficult. Like, you still have to do this stuff first. And yeah, I'm complete.
I'd like to borrow a sense which I'm possibly using incorrectly from biomimicry. And that is that seeds or embryos, when they're first conceived, must be protected and fed and nourished. They're not ready yet to face the dangers of the real world as adult, as grown entities that they will hopefully one day become. But in their birth, in their zygote phase, they're completely defenseless. They must be protected. Let me just stop there.
just have one little remark, and that is that we mentioned use cases and trying to see this from the use case perspective. And that's actually what I felt Anna was bringing, because as I hear you, what you're describing, Doug, is a technology which makes that experience possible. It's a technology which is sort of in the background, and it lets us be at the center and to be natural, and we can actually then simply be together and share in a very open, natural way. So I feel that you're actually saying the same thing from two slightly different perspectives.
So sorry, Tammy, you wanted to say something?
Go ahead, Sam.
I just wanted to point out that I had scheduled this for 90 minutes. And we're almost at 90 minutes. And our habit is to blast through these time boundaries almost all the time. But I just wanted to reflect that and see if anyone really has to go. I myself personally, this is a work day for me. I will try and stay as long as I can. This is clearly something that is core to my interest and core to my future. But getting paid is core to my survival. So I want to be able to support that also. But that's just a meta comment.
So jumping into use cases a little bit, what I would like to be able to do is have a system where in a conversation like this, when I bring up where I see there are connections, for example, with Arthur Brock and Daniel Harris, that there would be the ability for me to tag them to see this next bit so that I can share specifically what it is that about what they're working on, how that connects to other things. So in terms of interoperability, obviously it would be really great if we had a system where we pressed record, and then as a live and generative process, anyone could tag both for information or for connectability, people to be able to come in and connect their part right there, right? So this kind of generative knowledge web is part of what we need to be able to connect the work that we have. And there's a part of that, I feel like in this, much has been shared that's amazing, and it's all a part of the process, but we're still at the threshold. We're still at the doorway to enter into what the biological work of that shared knowledge repository is, because we're still learning how to take each other's information in and interrelate it to other pieces of information as a way to express what it is that we're learning. And so if there was a system where I had the capacity to be able to set up a session with someone who inspires me, have us, if we wanted to be directed by our community somewhat, have people be able to pose questions that they would like to know about either that person or the connection of the people's work that are in the conversation. And that if it wanted to be something that was live, that people could watch at the same time or participate in as a participant, that those things would be in the background, and the tools would be easy as clicking, I want to watch this right now, and that a user would also be able to take that artifact after the fact and easily share it with others, starting at a specific point. And in a sense, this for me is what work is going to look like. Like this is the work that needs to be done. Then that enters into the conversation compensation, as Sam was saying, you know, like he can't do this all day. He needs to get paid. And if we have systems where we are able to be compensated by doing this sense-making work, by doing this exploratory development work in terms of the knowledge base that lives in our bodies. So that does mean conversations and unearthing what people are learning and being able, which requires each person to be able to be clear enough to express it. It also means that there needs to be listeners who are able to receive it. And so there's a whole system that I feel that we are seeing glimpses of, and the work of understanding what we're talking about is what we're in right now. I'm excited because I feel like we're really at that place where we're transitioning from separate people having ideas of how it could be to really deeply understanding that we need to weave our offerings together. And that requires a different way of being in the body, in how we both express and listen, respect, and honor what is coming in, so that there is a greater weaving between us. But it does, for me, need to have specific functional pieces that we're feeding into in terms of how it might be built. And I would also say that these systems already exist. They're just not interoperable. So again, landing on the point of the Global Challenges collaboration is that our task, as we laid it out, was to make things work together, to cooperate, and to make technology interoperable with each other. And I feel that we have been doing some good learning there in terms of human interoperability, and I'd really like to see us take some strides in terms of the technological interoperability and use and start doing it. Right now, Glenn has already been kind of doing that we all have in different ways in how we have been feeding back on people's stuff. But that work that you've done, Glenn, in feeding back what you've heard, that is a huge demonstration of interoperability, because you've brought it in and you've put it out for others to be able to quickly understand what it is. And I just appreciate that so much in the work that you've offered to this group. And I'm excited to continue to push back against what we don't see yet. Because as we express our little pieces of it, this superstructure that needs to be created, we each get to see what is needed. And we each get to experience how difficult it is to make that into a nutshell that's easy to understand. So that was my attempt. And I'm curious to watch back and see how much was actually able to be captured in my expression. Because it isn't easy to talk about the whole thing from this one little part, because that is then a separate bit and not the whole. And I think that's part of the tension that we experience when we try and build it all of a piece. Hey, there's Daniel. Do you want to jump in? And you don't have to jump in right off the bat, but part of what we're talking about today is what is the meta structure that can assist us in kind of birthing a co-creative repository in terms of what we all bring to the table, and how we can use both technological tools and human interoperability processes to connect what we're doing in a useful way.
Could I just try to word what I understood? I think we all represent a vast amount of knowledge and experience, mostly implicit because it's in our heads. And some of it is recorded and noted and documented, but most of it it's not, and it's growing and changing all the time. So that's a given. And then we are all here, we want to make a better world, and all we can do is just our little part. So I can do what I have, just my time, my 24 hours a day, and I can have some time I can devote to making the world a better place. So what I want from you guys is just, I don't want to know anything except what I can use right here, right now. The rest is kind of redundant in this moment, but I still need to access it. So that's one thing. And then for that, we want to have tools. And I think Tammy described it very well. And there's other people said something about it. So I'm kind of, and there was a third thing. Oh, yes. And the third aspect I would like to mention is that I am building trust in you guys, that I do not have to know and understand everything because I have you guys. So that makes my life immensely more easy. So I can focus on my own stuff, and then I have a need. And I think it's far more practical to express the need in the group. So can anybody help me? And there's a trusted community, then I just will react and respond and give me exactly the information I need because you know so very much. So that's what I would like to add. Thank you.
A piece to this that in my process helped a lot with getting to a place of what for me was clarity, is that at each given instance, there's this yin and yang thing going on. There's the individual relative to a collaborative community or collective, and there's the collective relative to the individual. And so every piece of the puzzle is binary that way. And there's no such, it's sort of like, it's almost a multiplier effect that's like quantum computing relative to regular computing, because it exponentially increases the number of facets behind every single transaction. It's no longer a transaction of A to B, but it's this multidimensional thing that has a whole stack of perspectives or orientations in terms of mimetic pieces of the puzzle, ideas, right? So what emerged for me in trying to crack the nut on envisioning the platform or system that's missing was that I could relate to it if I took each layer, each sort of mimetic layer on its own terms, and then stack them up on top of each other. And that's where the machine works sort of idea came to mind, because it's sort of a three-dimensional, I sort of envision a three-dimensional cube of these layers. And so one layer is, what do I do? What do I bring? What's my skill or knowledge or expertise relative to a collective? And what's the collective's awareness of me associated with that skill? And that's sort of mappable, right? And then there's a workflow process in collaborative endeavor, and that's mappable in terms of information in, information out processes internally that are fractal in the way Glenn was envisioning, internal to the collaborative process, and then there's an output end. And there's a internal collection storage, and there's an external network connection to collaborators or dependencies. And there's another layer that relates to sentiment. How am I feeling in the midst of the collaborative system itself? And how is the collaborative system feeling about me? Like, I'm happy as a clam, but there are 15 people that want to rip my head off and shut down my throat. And it's sort of important to figure out the mechanism for that signaling to be going on, and for that awareness to be present, not on a moderated or led or top-down basis, but on a system basis. And And so I can go on, but there are these layers, and they're very concrete. When you reduce them to layers, they get very concrete, very defined, very easy to understand. And when you stack them up, the task design engineering element, which Glenn referenced at the top of this, comes into play in terms what's being called or evoked at a particular point in time by and between one or two or a group of people in their generative process. So it's a three-dimensional dynamic. And that can run, and to my mind, should run automatically in the background in real time at all times. And anybody that's part of the system is holding a place for, has huge awareness of, and accruing, growing learning and awareness of, not just in terms of what they do or what they think or but also on a human being level, how they're feeling, what they like, what their preferences are, in terms of how they like to work, as separate and apart from what applications and tools do they like to work with, as separate and apart from how they want to be signaled and communicated with, and how they prefer to communicate with others. And all of those dimensions, that each one of those is a layer. And it's a combination of figuring out how the collective learns up quickly about somebody new who's joined the system in a nature biomimicry way, Sam, to your point, that there's a new critter in the ecosystem, and every other critter in the ecosystem is going to be aware of it instantaneously and adjusting accordingly. So I do that, and this is something that's been, to Sam, to your point, I got materials, I got stuff on this. It's not long, it's not heavy, it's not drilled hugely detailed, and it certainly isn't expressed in any complex way. But I think there's a very grounded, rubber meets the road way of coming at this from that perspective, and then sort of reverse calculating for the engineering, and the actual design, architecture, coding, integration, etc. I want to finish with one last anecdotal piece that I think everybody here would appreciate. A friend of mine who I did a bunch of work for a bunch of times, named Bernie Krause. He's a PhD bioacoustician. He's one of the fathers of the field of going out into the most wild regions and recording the biome. And his recordings are like symphony orchestras. And you have the amphibians and mammals all the way in the low frequencies at the bottom, and you have the insects all the way up in the high frequencies we can't hear, and the birds and everything else in between. And his PhD, he came up with what he called the niche. And in the niche hypothesis, each individual biome is unique in terms of the community of critters that occupies it. And the reason that particular community ended up there is because every single creature found its frequency of communication open and available without interference, so they could hear each other. And if they could hear each other, they put a stake in the ground and they took that frequency. And if they couldn't, they kept going until they found a biome where they could. Brilliant idea, but also a brilliant reality for us. Because within an ecosystem of a collaborative, of the system we're envisioning, there are sub-ecosystems. And Anna is never going to communicate with, nor necessarily want to communicate with, a coding computer science guy who's playing League of Legends on the weekend. Like, they're different songs. And however, each has huge contribution to the whole. So how do you balance out what one person wants relative to the system, which is a completely different thing than what somebody else wants? And with that, I'm complete. Sorry for the length of that.
I see it, Harry. I'm wondering, as a first, and hopefully not the last, of this particular focus of conversation, I'm wondering whether each of us feels they've made a sufficient opening statement in this particular forum. For the record, I feel I have not. But I also feel that we're very, very over time already.
Yeah, I don't think we've all kind of put our pieces in. Daniel.
I was out shopping when I saw this, so I was listening in between walking from shop to shop, and it was just interesting just hearing bits and pieces. But I don't have anything to add right now, but I'm sure I will do, and I definitely will do over the coming few months. That definitely have things to say and things to show, so that would be cool.
Well, I'm not in any rush, but I would love to hear what statement you would like to make, Sam, or Harry, for that matter. Well, you've said something, Harry, but I think we should all. I would love to hear some more.
Well, let me just make a short, again, comment, which is, I don't think I'm ready yet to talk about what I've been thinking the last several years. What I'm curious about is whether we can talk about how we want to have that conversation and how we want to live the way we think. If we all believe that such tools enable collaboration, could we experiment with some tools like this? Whether it's a wiki, or whether it's workflowy, or whether it's Google Docs, or whether it's a calendar, My one attempt today was workflowy. And I've tried to take very verbatim notes, although, when I'm speaking, obviously I don't type. I can't do both at the same time. I don't have that level of a bicameral mind. But I've tried to capture as much of what others have been saying. Now, it's clearly not the essence. It's only the words. But it's a foundation on which other people could potentially then rehook their insights. And if we had tools that could do all of this transcription and, author identification stuff, I wouldn't have to type. I could just spend all of this time listening. Ideally, if we had the right tools, I could then connect ideas I'm hearing from what Doug's saying to ideas that Tammy was talking about, to ideas that Harry was talking about, to ideas that Heiner was talking about, and stuff that Daniel's building, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then to stuff that hopefully I've been, able to write about myself. So I'm trying to figure out how we would want to have this conversation before I even get into my reams and reams of different kind of project-specific ideas.
I like what Harry said in that. By the way, I haven't been on this call that much, so I've missed a lot. But I like what Harry said in terms of just showing me something that's working already. So I'm not going to tell you anything, Harry, because I don't have anything yet that's working. But I've been in a number of projects or spoken to a number of people that were always shifting so this is kind of referencing what you're saying, Sam, is referencing, so they're always getting new tools. And so I'm just bouncing from new tool to new tool. And actually, I really like Google Docs because most people are on them. And although it is a flat file document system, and I fully appreciate what you're saying about, and I would want that world too, where I just drag in, look, and then we can see percentages, and I live for that too. But right now, in order to get somewhere, I have not seen tools like that work like that for me. And I think that similarly for you, and it's very frustrating that they're so kludgy. I guess the question for me is it possible for us to figure out where the common ground is? For sure, there's loads of areas where there isn't common ground, and that's fine. We don't have to agree on everything, and I don't want to agree on anything. I don't think it's a good thing to do. But just where is there common ground for 100% of us, for 50% of us? Do we obviously it's like a tree that there's maybe a bulk of, there's a certain amount of stuff that we all can agree, as in desire. And then as it branches, things branch off and sort of like go like this, and then there's only maybe one of us on a branch or two of us on a branch, that kind of thing. And that for me is quite interesting in terms of, and again, using Google Docs or some kind of collaborative document system is very kludgy, and I don't necessarily know how to do it in that mode. But that's
So 5 seconds on that. I am aware that most everybody is on Google Docs. That's why I wanted to introduce something a little bit new, a little bit different. I mean, just introducing Google Docs again, yes, may help us in this one particular instance, but it's not really pushing the envelope of what people could see and could be experimenting with.
Push.
Yeah, I mean, just to give you a sense, in the next call, I'll probably try something else. And if you want a glimpse at it, try it. Try it, something called MindMeister. Okay, second thought, and then I'll shut up for good, okay? And that is that in these kind of conversations, and I've been in so many of these, and Tammy's been, and Doug's been, and all of you have been in, but my notion of this is it is frustrating for us to think about agreement. What I would recommend first is to talk about confederation. In other words, for each of us to keep doing what we're doing and to give each of us enough awareness with a little bit of pull from each of us, that says, hey, I'm interested in knowing what you're doing, that we can mutually support asynchronously, non-centralized, in a distributed way, reinforcing what we're already doing until the conversation evolves to a point where I could say, wow, here's something I agree on. So I'm going to do this thing in a more focused way with, just to name somebody, with Heiner or with Tammy or with Doug or with Daniel. I can find those opportunities as these conversations evolve rather than forcing it from step zero that we have to come to a common understanding or a common direction. That would be my notion, is to start with confederation before we try the federation side. Over.
Just want to say I'm cool with that. I'm happy to modify what I was saying. Yeah, that sounds nice.
I learned especially from these experiments and conversations, that agreeing is a kind of waste of my time. What I need is that I trust we have similar desires for a better world, always our own visions, and they can be extremely deep, as Glenn so well demonstrated, and they can be extremely detailed, but it's all a personal thing. But what I committed myself to is do whatever I can within my situation, and then I just can start from that, and I don't need you to agree. I just need to trust you to help me with whatever I need, and then I have a far more simpler frame, being the thing I want to do, And then within that frame, I can connect with you because I can trust you, and we can be very specific. And I don't need all your paradigms and theories and solutions and visions, because that's, for me, how much I respect it, far too much to handle. So I tend to, I like the global visioning thing a lot, and I do that for myself as well. I have my own huge story and visions as well. But I would like, I'm at this point, 2018, trying to, okay, Harry, keep it simple, do whatever you can, and reach out to the people and make yourself known. So I share myself wherever and however I can. I try to be as clear and transparent as I can be. And then you can make, and I'm available to support you just the same as you. I hope you will support me. And then I will step by step start working from that. That's kind of where I am at this point. And with that, I'm complete. Thank you.
Harry, do you mind sharing exactly what your passion is, what you do?
Yeah, well, I'm addicted to clarity, and I'm obsessed by understanding, but I'm learning that I cannot understand everything, because I have my own way of trying to understand and represent it, and I make my living from that as a graphic facilitator. So I strongly resonated with the shared representation, and I learned that documenting and reading, documenting everything is very valuable, but then I don't want to waste time absorbing my learnings from it. So I don't have, and I didn't take time to see all the recordings of everything, but I just can't handle that. And I didn't have time to read all the notes that people have made. I don't even read my own notes anymore. And what I learned, and from my professional life, is when you can make a clear representation, how always being from one perspective, of course, and it's complete, then people see it, and that takes, and that's been researched, a third of a second. So I like that. I like that path. I like that way of communicating stuff, and then if I take that seriously, I would start trying to make kind of diagrams and pictures of whatever we've seen. And for that reason, I'm also very interested in what Glenn has done, and that might be of help, because I think Glenn is an extremely smart person. But there are a lot of people who've done the same thing. This is a book from, I think, in the 80s, of a guy, and he also did he took the whole reality and has put it in his kind of diagrams as well. So this, where are we on the screen? So he kind of caught his conception of reality and what life is about, and how we kind of represent it in this book. And then he kind of made this book, which is a huge amount of work, as you all know. And then he has put it out in the world, and nobody knows about it. So it's very interesting to try and find a common language, but I think that's a challenge in itself. Over. I make pictures. That's what I do.
That's a good run to go on, Doug. Maybe we can do just a quick of what we actually want to bring. I would like to use my curiosity to explore all of the awesome people that are doing things in conversation, so that I can understand them and we can create artifacts such that they can be better understood by others, and to convene and help to connect people with their work, so that we can understand more the breadth of the movement of change agents that are activating, and wanting to contribute to transition, and to creating the constructs that are needed to invigorate the commons, to be able to make that value explicit, seen, and have people working with each other to co-design knowledge systems and commons-based ways of creating this new meta system, these new meta systems that need to interoperate. So I want to understand it. I want to talk to people who want to create those things and create little media artifacts to help to connect people with what that looks like. Flying the plane while building the plane.
I'll have a go. I am in the process of building what seems to be basically one application and browser plugin. So an application that can run on different platforms, mobile as well, and a browser plugin to do a number of jobs. And one of the jobs is to basically log into multiple services at the same time. At the moment, we've chosen the kind of media industry. So, and that's for pushing out information, pushing out songs, videos, and images, and also metadata associated with that. In this case, copyright information. So sending it to various places you'd want to register that information. And then coming back down, we're aggregating. So that's kind of syndicating to multiple services, and then aggregating from those services things like fan engagement, sales reports, and so forth. And the aim for me around this is making it much easier for an artist to get the stuff out there, and also to manage their sales and be involved, and basically build a helper for them. What's interesting about that methodology, and also why the browser plugin, because allow people to tag information, tag media they see around the web with, I was involved in this, this isn't true, this is true. It's very interesting. And I'm not sure if it's going to end up really bad, as in, I'm not sure if it's a really bad thing to build or not. But hopefully in the next couple of months, I'll have some demo, kind of very, very, not functional, but just like walkthroughs that I will want to show you and get your feedback on, because I'm not sure whether it's a bad world to go into, to allow people to go to any photo and say, this has Daniel in it, and then, get Daniel to authorize that. It's a bit like what happens on Facebook photos at the moment, but we need that for the music industry, because people need to prove that they were in a song, and that we need to build a protocol around trusting that proof. So signatures, digital signatures, and so forth. So it's like, as someone has mentioned, that it's in a different forum, that it's a bit of feature creep happening, but it's kind of interesting because the generic of it is all pretty much the same, being allowed to enable to tag information around media in terms of ownership, use, rules, remuneration, and then my interest is, well, how does that look in different sectors? Like in the travel sector, for instance, we already have quite a mature area. We can search multiple flights at the same time, multiple trains at the same time, and so forth. But what happens if it was in the application and I wasn't reliant on a service provider to sit in the middle? And I'm really, really excited for this world where users end up taking a lot more power back here and have some quite high-powered bots working for them, not necessarily in real time. Maybe just go out and find that and come back in a day, or keep looking. That's quite interesting. I've forgotten the word, Tammy, but anyway, in the democracy space, when this whole idea started quite a few months ago, I thought, we could move it into that. And so obviously I haven't done much more work on that, about how to engage with multiple service providers in the kind of like change.org, represent.me, all those kind of people that are taking information from people, taking views about what people want and or what they think about something. And I quite like this idea that we can, well, what happens if it was an application that was connecting into these? So it's all about stepping stones for me. It's, by the way, we're non-profit and the application is open source, so it's meant to be a reference implementation that other people can copy. Great, you know, it's not about trying to capture any marketplace because we're not selling anything in terms of monetary stuff. So, but what happens if people could represent their thoughts, their dreams, their visions in a kind of a way that was totally distributed, and they could push it to traditional, I love this, to traditional spaces like government or opinion polls, and they could also push it to each other directly as well, and then find out where the groupings are dynamically. And I think what's, especially in the music space, there's been a lot of jumping on the blockchain and let's build a whole new era. And what I'm really keen on is to bridge the gap between this whole new frontier and the traditional dinosaurs, who are basically still the mechanism for how you make money, you know, whether you like it or not. And we can't throw away that. And it's the same for governance as well. You know, can we pander to the need for government to have answers from us? And we do it more efficiently than they can do it. And then, wow, you know, like the whole emphasis shifts. And then perhaps we don't need them so much for some functions. Or perhaps we can make some of those functions more efficient. Yeah, it's very early days for where it's at, but that's kind of what's exciting me at the moment. Thanks. Over.
That's all very exciting. Just in terms of reflecting how it could be used within this group and the process we've been in, like it would be amazing to be able to, all of us that are in a conversation, to this media artifact, so that there is a place where we could see, oh, this is where all of these people have convened. These are the topics that have been discussed. And also having another person be able to go in and say, you need to meet this person, and can tag it for their attention to go to the file to be able to see what's been talked about, and then be able to connect with people to convene another conversation that extends this work.
Okay, I'll commit to having some sort of mechanism for those ideas to be placed somewhere and in the next few weeks, just because I need to gather use cases right now, because it is very early days and we are slowly defining what it is. And luckily it's a long project. So, and then genericize that so that it can be used in all sectors. So yeah, okay, that's really good. So yeah. But I take what you say on board as it is, but also, yeah, I want to get more feedback, and I think I kind of want to present something that's a bit more of the shape of what I'm thinking, and then you might riff, you all might be able to riff on that as well. Awesome.
Stoked to continue to participate.
Yeah, yeah. I told you I'd be coming out of the woods in the new year. Great.
I just got a little comment to that. Really interesting, Daniel. So what I see when I hear you talk about this is one network of people and one network of information and links between those networks. So let's say this conversation is stored. So I see this as bubbles, that this conversation is one bubble. You can see it like a bubble from a distance. You see all the names of the people, they're tagged in the conversation. And so that's one aspect. Then there's also the means, the different informational units. And let's say you go into the stream of words, and if anyone else in the network at some point has a remark that they feel is interesting enough to put there. So there's a self-selection mechanism here. Then that can be tagged to that moment, and then another remark can be tagged to that again, and anyone could put this in at any time. So it could happen real time, or it could happen in different times. And what occurs to me then is that there seems to be, as far as I can tell, a system here which has a self-corrective mechanism, because if one person just adds garbage, then it should be easy to just have a function, okay, I'll just not see the contributions of that person. So you will get rewarded by bringing value to the system. So what I see is one network of people and one network of information which are tied directly together.
Thanks. Yeah, that feels aligned. Yes, great.
And it creates the context for other levels of interoperability as well, because it is these different dimensions of interaction and different pieces of the puzzle that all need to fit in together, or at least have the ability to hold hands.
I think there is also a need for the levels of functions and processes, because it is not just the identity, but where it is placed. So if I would try in a nutshell, I try to do embodiment to make this concretion and contextualizations of issues. So Tony Judge called it pointers to possibilities, to really negotiate about the same thing and understand what it's not the same thing, instead of doing the big fighting. So it's policy and multi-track diplomacy and peacemaking I'm journeying for.
Well, I'll throw in. I bring in terms of sort of the practical nuts and bolts stuff. I bring in being an attorney. I'm a lover, not a fighter. I don't do litigation or anything adversarial. I only build and create things. And I specialize in new entities, new syntheses of organizational structures, and innovative approaches to that. Spent the last 30 years involved with that kind of stuff. And I also bring personal coaching, and I teach development work at weekends that are Adlerian based, meet your maker stuff. And so I help people overcome fears and beliefs that tend to interject themselves between them and their greatest, grandest visions and creations. Since self-defeat is the most common form of failure of people realizing dreams. And last but not least, I bring a lot of work and offerings, contributions, and mind share to this transformation concept of how do we fix it? How do we do it better? How do we do us better? Aspirationally on a global basis, and in relation to the biggest, darkest, gnarliest organizations on the planet, the sort of Darth Vaders, how do they get transformed? Since fixing them might minimize their damage really quickly, if that could be pulled off. And a lot of time I've spent the last 5-6 years obsessively thinking about building the system platform that we're talking about through a human being centered lens. I am not a computer scientist, a coder. I am a meta Uber user. And that's for me, and I'm complete, but I bring all of that and offer all of that to all of you, and to this collaboration.
Yeah, shoot. Well, we're gonna say a few things about what we can bring, right? And what we want to bring. Okay, I'll keep it relatively short, but for me, the participation in these conversations, that is one layer, which is very interesting for me. But I'm also interested in the written layer and even drawings and the interoperability between them. I had a very interesting little conversation a few days ago with Peter Anderson, who's been part of a few of the conversations, and he asked whether we have any priorities, and then I formulated some of my impressions of the priorities of this group. That may be my sort of personal projection, maybe it's my priorities, but anyway, what I said was, I see it as the conversations themselves. That is the very process, exactly what Anna talked about, and all of you talked about, the being together, showing up, a whole communication. It's so much here, you know. That's one aspect of it, just the process alone, which has inherent value, and to participate in that process. And then there's the media artifacts which organically emerge from that process, and they can have many purposes. They document the process, but they can also create repositories of interesting ideas and memes, etc., which is kind of what we're discussing today, what systems would be best for that process. And then there's the third part, which is the deep thinking about global solutions which have world-changing potential and are scalable. And then he answered that he thought that we had been doing a lot of the first two, but he hadn't seen that we'd been doing any of the third, the deep thinking, sort of creating this, designing together. And I agree with him on that, but I also think it takes some time, and I feel that that's what we're beginning to do now. That, and I also feel that this process, I mean, it's big work. It's really great big work if you want to have a global perspective. So I really value just going slowly through this and sharing a little and thinking a little about what we shared, and see it again and sort of let this marinate a little bit in the consciousness, and not rush it. But I definitely feel, for me, that I'm ready to also go into some specifics and to combine that with the process. Now I feel that I want to go into that and this thread that we've been looking at today, to really continue down this rabbit hole and try to learn as much as possible. And so, yeah. So that would be more conversations like this, but also to use written communication in combination with it, where there's also a lot of potential which I feel we haven't tapped yet. So I'm very, very excited about all of this. Yeah.
Glenn, I think I see now where I feel we are different. No, we are the same. But when you said it's so hard to have a global perspective, I contest that. I think we can have a local, we can have regional, we can have a global perspective, but it's like with painting. It's either a fine stroke or a broad stroke. And what we did with Tony Judge, not only coining the term global, but really allowing us to share common frames of references, and then jointly, and maybe in this group, metacognitively or whatever, concretely go into details and then negotiate the context concretely. So if we come to this, that we not only have eyes, but we have other senses, then we are really making a major step. And I think this is an evolutionary step. We called it with Konrad Lorenz Institute emergent series. So it is really necessary, like animals can do. There are fishes which have eyes to see above and to see below, or they have other senses. We have to go beyond this strict dogma of being right and only can feel or can only smell. We have, as model-making animals, humans, this potential to even develop extra eyes and other senses or antennas. So I know you really wanted to say that, but I just wanted to make very sure that this challenge is to not tell our pupils in school, humans are small, there are commandments, and we cannot think big, or otherwise our brain shrinks or explodes or whatever. Now we can do that, but not in all detail, all the time, everywhere.
So I'm curious if I'll put in another little piece. So in us convening and focusing our 7 attentions together here and creating this moment of understanding where we're together, and then weaving in what Glenn's talking about around a meta, the writing we can do about it, the piecing things together that we can do about it. One of the ways that I've been practicing that is using Medium as a mock-up space rather than a website, right? So one of the things that we could do as a group is to create a publication together where we're all editors so that we can go in and add pieces to each other's, to articles where we're expressing and exploring what we're learning while embedding the source media into it, as well as the links to other things. The technology isn't perfect, but it is an open space that we can use as a canvas to be able to bring things together, not only these presence expressions of collaboration, but also have kind of that long tail. So that others can participate, so that we can add our reflections and our the inspiration we might have, and we can also call people to those collections of information that is a mock-up to the system that we might want to build, so that we can in real time take what it is that we're creating and create at least a mock-up of what it might look like. And maybe we can embed what Harry's been drawing through this process today, and the links to our work as we have them presented, whether they be in Google Docs or a website or another video, so that we can just have that space to be able to mock up. So I will commit to creating a publication in Medium that we can all be added to, so that we can test that technology to And this gives us the opportunity to put wheels on the use case and the application specifications that can feed into how we make things interoperable and how we can see that sort of palette of what it is we're working with and kick the tires.
Okay, just I'll try to contribute to whatever you put there. You start the medium thing and then you share it, and then we'll try to add whatever we can. Then I'll test one thing at a time. Okay.
So what might be a neat thing for us to do there is we've spoken some of the things we all bring to the table. Maybe we could each do a paragraph so that it is written and kind of in that form.
Well, that's already a solution in a format. I would just like to kind of try to weave it in the way the way we're just kind of experimenting if that's the proper way to do it or not. Just so I would suggest to try not to make any specific protocol. Just test whatever feels good and then discuss it.
Sounds good.
And I would like to start one Facebook thread where maybe I'll review some of what we talked about today. And if anyone has any comments of any kind, I would be really interested in that, and just collect many different comments in one thread. And if we're not happy with any of them, we just delete them. And that can be a living document too. And then when we feel that, oh, there, it was said well, something came out there, that can be a piece that we can put into this Medium platform. And then we actually have a publication going. So I think that's a great idea.
Are there any other actions that people want to take together that can help to serve this whole and this development and birth?
I just made a comment in the chat just saying because about the naming of this, it seems like the group and the page were named, the URL link was named Global Challenges Collaboration, which is awesome. And I think if so, I was just going to say if the Medium thing is going to has to have a URL, then kind of that's cool, awesome. But that's I know it wouldn't work for Twitter because it's too long. But hey, whatever. It's always a shame there. But anyway, I didn't know if you guys wanted to hear about, one of the options that we have for the funding, which I've kind of been adminning. Yeah, I'll just do a quick review of that. Just that a little bit more money got added to it. Yeah, just to be really clear, it's just one way of fundraising. I think it's good that we just have loads of different ways, and so this one has 199 euros in it so far, minus fees and credit card clearance, whatever's. And the thing that I posted just recently, which was quite interesting, is that this particular Open Collective, this particular website, is allowing businesses to match fund. And this was just a trial with what happened. And Tammy, you just snuck in there because I think all the money had almost been used up, but you managed to get a match fund to what you did. So that was awesome. So this is quite interesting that I don't know how fine-grained it can be cut, but if for example, some company comes along and says, I want to match fund with anyone who's giving to either these explicit different projects or anyone who's involved in collaboration or whatever, you know. So I'm keeping track of what's going on, but it's quite interesting, just that idea, that concept that I will match anyone's funding who's funding a particular genre of project. So that's quite interesting. Yeah, I don't know if I have anything more to say about that, or if there's any questions. Over.
Well, I just want to thank you for pushing that, because this gives us the opportunity to weave in some real world stuff. Like, if we have nearly 200 euros of resources that we've collectively put in there, and what are we going to do with them? What do we want to choose to invest in, and how can we grow that so that we can, I would like to see us each being compensated for our contributions in these spaces, and to co-design that together of how we do that, because the work that we are doing is of value. And if we can present it such that it's understood well enough by people, the value that we're creating, and or we create ways for incremental value to be created all along the way, that we can figure it out. But it's an important question. How do we share the resources that we are gathering together? And how do we plant our flag in the sand well enough that people say, oh, that's something I want to invest in?
Just really quickly, I just want to say, I believe that this thing we're doing here, if we do it well enough, it will be incredibly valuable. I think it's like Facebook or Snapchat or something. It's nothing compared, because this is a whole new dimension of possibility. So, but yeah, I love that we can have a fund like that, and just have to figure out how to do the work. That's the question, isn't it?
Okay, people, I'm kind of at the end of my attention span, so I would like to thank you all for being here together, and I will follow whatever my stomach tells me to do at this point. Thank you, and goodbye.
This feels good for me too, and my brother is asking me to go and fry some tempeh, so I'm going to go and do that. But thanks very much for, yeah, it's really lovely to see how this group is, like, you know, people wanting to be added all the time. It's lovely to see momentum. I'm curious as to how other groups have continued beyond the submission, and what happened with them. But that information will come, I guess. So thank you very much, guys and girls and in-betweeners. Yeah.
Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Daniel. Nice to see you.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
I also enjoyed very much, and I call it a day.
Okay.
Thank you, Heiner. Nice to see you.
Is there anything more anyone wants to say, or I think I'm good. But,
maybe we could.
I'm digesting, but I think this was very, very generative, and there's some very real concrete threads emerging. And it was a very satisfying, I think, first round to stick our toe in the rubber meets the road direction that we started from, meets this kind of conversation. And I'm really happy and satisfied. I'm also exhausted and have to go walk 2 dogs that are sitting there with their legs crossed. So, so I'm going to bid at you, but thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Wonderful. Yes, great steps. And we'll see you guys tomorrow.
Yeah. Right. So it's bye-bye for now, and yeah. So I'm gonna get some food here. So
All right.
great seeing you.
You bet.
Bye.
Bye-bye.